walk you through setting up a MacInCloud account. This is it's not really a virtual machine. You're actually running a Macintosh on the cloud, in the cloud, through your PC, and can do iOS development, and can also do the Xamarin development on the Mac, so you can create both Android and iOS. I have not done this before, so I'm going to kind of walk through it, and we'll see how it goes. There are several different pricing plans. There is an academic plan as well. We have the pay-as-you-go and the managed server. The managed server is the one that I would recommend. However, there is also you have a managed server or a dedicated server account. The difference with the dedicated server is you get admin root and access. I think for the things that we are doing, though, we will not need to worry about having admin access. I believe that the managed account or managed server will work fine for both Xamarin and iOS Xcode. And one way I'm going to check on that is I'm going to come back to the features, and here's the Virtual Studio for Mac and Xamarin. So they say here you can do it with a managed plan. Okay, managed server plan or the dedicated build server plan. Have Microsoft Visual Studio Community and Xamarin Community for Mac configured. So that's great. Just to double check here with Xcode. With Xcode, we can also use the managed plan or the dedicated plan. So for the price difference, I think at this point, for the types of things we're doing, the $20 is a much better option than the $49. However, there is an academic plan. To qualify for academic pricing, you simply need to sign up with your southmountaincc.edu or maricopa.edu email address. And if you don't have that, then you're going to have to demonstrate proof that you're a student, sending them a copy of your student ID or something similar. And let's double check what the academic plan has to offer. So if I sign up for the academic plan, so this is the managed server plan. It's actually the one we want. And you'll see the price here is $16 a month. There's a $1 setup fee. So that is the one that I want. There are different locations here. And probably I want the one nearest Los Angeles rather than Dallas. It's going to use Mojave 14.6. And you can choose other options here. Mojave is going to be the later one. It supports Xcode 10.3 and Visual Studio 2019. In the classroom, we're running High Sierra. However, it's Visual Studio 2017 for Mac. And I think for the C# class, we really want the Visual Studio 2019. So I'm going to stick with the Mojave 10.14. Choose my payment cycle. I want to pay monthly. Now the monthly gives us a 3-hour daily limit. So I can only work 3 hours a day on this. If you want a higher limit, you're going to pay a little bit more. So the regular price is $20 a month. We're getting this a little bit cheaper for our purposes. So I might want to choose the 5-hour daily limit and pay the normal price of $20. So I'm actually getting an extra 2 hours free by going through the academic process. There are some add-ons here where you can add in larger RAM. 8 gig I think should probably be fine for us. It's included at 1080p. We can go 4K resolution. That's kind of not pertinent for what we want to do. So I think those are all okay. If you wanted a faster speed, that's an option as well. I think this should serve us fine. And so I'm going to click next. So I'm now going to pay $20 a month because I've gone to that 5 gigabytes a day. And I need to put in my information. Because we're using the academic plan, our email needs to end in a .edu. And then your credit card information. Okay, so I put in my credit card information. The next step here is, do I want to connect my Visual Studio to a Visual Studio for Mac? So if you're running Visual Studio, say in a Windows 10 Pro, and you want to build a Macintosh or an iOS project on your PC, you can connect remotely to your Mac to have it build. I'm going to suggest in this course, I would just use the virtual machine here and build for both Android and Mac. But if you want to do Windows, Mac, and Android, or Windows, iOS, and Android, you would want to do the remote build. And that's an additional $250 per month. I'm not going to check it because I do have a Mac that I can build on, and so I can run that locally on my machine. I'm really just doing this for those of you who need this option. So I'm going to accept the billing and cancellation policy. I might want to review that. So the billing is all sales are final. So you can cancel at any time for any reason. It's not an annual commitment. You will be billed monthly. And I'm going to go ahead and accept that, accept the terms of service and the privacy policy, and subscribe. So in my email, they sent a link with a zip file. I've downloaded that. I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to extract everything. I'm going to place it on my desktop, selecting the folder. So I'm going to create a MacInCloud folder and extract. Okay, so in this folder it has some different pop-ups. I'm suspecting these are basically the size of my monitor. I'm running 1920 by 1080. However, for this demonstration, I'm doing 1280 by 720, so I'm just going to pop that one up for now. This is a remote desktop connection. I'm going to connect. Here then is my connection. So they also emailed me a username and a password. I'm going to go ahead and put that information in. All right, so I'm back into my MacInCloud remote desktop session. The icon, this little purple infinity symbol, is the Visual Studio for Mac 2019. I'm going to double click on that. And I'm going to create a new project. You can see I've ran a few tests already. So I'm going to create a MacInCloud test 3. I want this to be a new project. It's going to be a blank forms app. I'm going to click next. And then I'm going to give my app a name. And I'm just going to simply call it MacInCloud test 3. The organization identifier is a reverse URL that's unique for you as a developer. It's going to be com.something. And so if you were working for a company, it'd be the reverse URL of their company. For now, I'm going to suggest you use com dot and whatever your last name is, or maybe your full name. Something kind of unique to you. And then my target platform is going to be both Android and iOS. And I'm going to use the .NET Standard Library. I'll click Next. Here's my project name, my solution name, and the location of where it's going to be located. So you can browse and put it somewhere else on your hard drive within the remote desktop. I'm going to ignore the Git version. I'm not going to add any UI test at this point, and I just click Create. Now you want to watch up here. It says Restoring Packages for Solution. That might take a few minutes. Eventually it's going to say Packages Restored, Generated File Successfully, and you're ready to work. So over here on the left-hand side, we have our 3 projects. The first is our shared code. I'm going to expand this down. And the file we're seeing right here is this mainpage.xaml, X-A-M-L, it's pronounced XAML. That is our interface code. And we're going to come back and make some changes to that. Underneath of that, linked to it, is the mainpage XAML.cs. This is the C# code behind, which is our other tab. So those two open automatically. For our main page XAML, we have a label right now that just says Welcome to Xamarin.Forms. This is a default empty form, but it does have one object, this label. I'm going to make a few modifications here. I'm going to click right in front of the word text. I want to give this a name. It's going to be x:"name with the n capitalized equals, and then in quotes, I'm going to put in LBL welcome. Okay, again, I like to use the Hungarian notation. And then after that, in front of our stack layout, I'm going to add a button. So I use a less than symbol to start my tag for the button. The button's going to have an attribute of text equals, and my text is just simply going to be SMCC. And then after that, I'm going to add a clicked event, and my clicked event is going to be SMCC clicked. After that, I'm going to do a /greater than to end that tag. And at this point, it's probably a good idea to go to the build menu and choose rebuild or build all, either way. That way it refreshes this and we'll be able to recognize this name in our code. Now right now I'm getting an error. And that error is down here on the iOS, and basically is a compatibility issue for the iOS side. We don't have the most recent version of Xcode, which is what apparently they did a slight update on Visual Studio for the Mac just in the last couple of days, and it now is looking for the newer version of Xcode 11.1. To fix that, I'm going to right-click on MacInCloud Test and come down to Options. And one of the solutions here is in the options, go to the iOS build and come to linked behavior and change this to linked framework SDKs only. So to make that modification, so I'm changing from don't link to link framework SDKs only, and I'm going to click OK. And when I do that, that error goes away. We still have a warning message, and that warning simply is that it's looking for 11.1, but now that we've changed that link behavior, the error went away, still suggesting that we upgrade. And there's an option here to upgrade to 11.1, and then you have to go into preferences and make some changes. For now, this should work. I'm going to click on my C# code behind, and in the code behind, we have our public main page initializer or constructor. And I'm going to come down here and add a method for private void, and we want that SMCC clicked was the event that we're going to handle. And I need the object sender, comma, event args e that we're familiar with from our first part of the course, and I want my curly brackets. And then I want to write my code. So my code here is simply going to be LBL welcome dot text equals, and we're going to say welcome to South Mountain. So we're just going to change the text of the label. This is just a simple little workflow to see if everything's working correctly. Now I'm going to go back into my solution. I'm going to actually lock this down a little bit. So one of the things you may need to do before running your Android emulator is you may need to go to Tools and go to the SDK Manager. And in the SDK Manager, you can choose which versions of the Android iOS you want to have available to you. Right now I have 8.0, 9.0, and 10.0. You can make as many of these available to you. Just remember that that's what you want to set up your emulator to use. It will take some time to download and install these, just to be aware of that. And then in the locations, we have to set up the Android SDK, the Android NDK, and the Java SDK. Now, if these are blank, you'll need to set them up. If they're not blank, they're probably good, but you may want to set them to what I have here. So the Android SDK, I have /users/ and then my user ID /library/android/SDK. And then Android NDK is /usr/local/bin. And the Java SDK is /library/java/java virtual machines /JDK 1.8.0_192.JDK /contents/home. There is an article that MacInCloud sent me on setting these up because I questioned. I had some problems initially, and I will make that article available in Canvas as well. If you have problems, I would also suggest contacting the MacInCloud support team. They have been very responsive to the couple questions I've asked. So I'm going to click OK. Right now we have MacInCloud test3.android is the startup package we're going to use. So I'm going to start up for Android. Up here at the top, we have our little start button, but then over here to the right of that, we're showing we're doing MacInCloud Test 3. We're going to debug, and then we're going to choose which emulator we want to debug to. So you'll have to set up a couple emulators, and there's a manage Android devices. So I have two that I've set up. I'm going to use the Pixel 2.0. But to set these up, you simply go to manage Android devices, and in this screen you can click New Device, and you can set up, give it a name. You can set the base device, the processor. I always want to check, make sure the height and width are what I want it to be. So my device is 1080 by 1920. And if you go full screen here, that'll get you around the button bar at the bottom. And you can say Create. I'm going to click Cancel. I've got two of these set up. I'm going to open up my Pixel 2 Oreo 8.0. So I'm going to click Play first. I think it's sometimes helpful to start your emulator first. And while that's starting, I can close this window. So you can see it's going to start down here. Get this little error about the GPU driver. I'm going to click OK. So my emulator is still starting up. And this is in essence a virtual machine that's running on the MacInCloud. You might want to set up a tablet as well as a phone if you want to design for a tablet. And we have controls over here for emulator. You can rotate the device. You can take a snapshot of the screen. You can change the audio. And again, things look a little squished in this view of my desktop. I think once I go full screen, things will look a little bit better. But our whole goal here is to make sure that this works. Okay, so now my emulator is up and running. I'm going to come back over here to Visual Studio for Mac. And I've set this up then to run in that emulator, my Pixel 2. So I'm going to click the Start button over here. And we'll see it start to build for the Android. And then it will deploy to the device. I'm going to bring my device back up to the front. So now it's installing the application to the device. And there's my application. I get Welcome to Xamarin.Forms. Here's my SMCC button at the bottom. When I click it, it now says Welcome to South Mountain. So my project worked on the Android emulator. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And now I want to go to my iOS emulator. So I'm going to click on the MacInCloud test3.ios. I'm going to right click on that and set that as the startup project. So now it's bold. And my screen has changed up at the top. So I've got MacInCloud test3.ios. Again, I'm going to debug. And here I have all of the different iPhone and iPad devices. I've already started up the iPhone 11, though typically I do for the iPhone 8, and you can choose which operating system version you want to use for your emulator. Okay, so I'm going to run it on the phone 11. I've already got that running. I'm just going to bring that up. So here's my iPhone 11. So we're going to start this. And again, it's going to build for the iOS device, and this is going to deploy it to the emulator. So again, watch this area up here, and also watch down here at the bottom. You might see some messages come up down there. Let's bring up the device again. Whoops, that's the Android device. Let's bring up the iOS device. Move it over here so we can see the messages. So it's building. And again, just takes a little time to build and to deploy it. And of course, it's a little bit slower in the cloud than it would be on your normal machine. But there is my application running in the emulator. Again, I get the SMCC button. This is what a iOS button looks like versus the Android button you saw earlier. I'm going to click that, and it does say Welcome to South Mountain. So my interface is coming up, and my code behind is working on both the iOS and the Android. We're going to stop the application. And I will close out of Visual Studio. Then I will quit my simulator. You can also quit down here. So here's my Android emulator. I can choose quit. So I'm going to quit my projects, and then I'm going to log out of my desktop connection. So you can go to the Apple and you can say log out, or you can just simply close your remote desktop connection window. I'm going to choose log out. And it's still trying to close the Android emulator. Once that closes, it'll log us out. So that's our process for developing a project in MacInCloud. And you can see that everything does work.